Have you ever felt the weight of life pressing down on you again and again? You rise only to fall. You try, yet stumble. But I want you to hear this truth. God does not intend for you to live in cycles of temporary victories. He is not in the business of lifting you only to let you fall. Today, we are going to discover how to step into His permanent elevation and why, when He lifts you, it is forever. Have you ever woken up, looked in the mirror, and asked yourself, why am I always rising only to fall again? You try, you fight, you pray, yet somehow life feels like a relentless cycle. You celebrate a victory today, only to face a setback tomorrow. And if you're honest with yourself, you're tired, exhausted, weary of the constant ups and downs. But listen carefully, because what I am about to tell you is the key to breaking free from this endless roller coaster. You see, God does not design His children to live a life of temporary victories. He does not intend for you to rise only to stumble, to soar, only to crash. There is a plan, a purpose, a pattern that is greater than what you have experienced. And the first thing you must understand is this: rising and falling is not a reflection of failure, it is a reflection of preparation. Yes, preparation. Every time you fall, every time life knocks you down, it is not to humiliate you, it is to train you, to shape you, to build within you the resilience you need for something far greater than you have yet imagined. But here's the problem. Many people never recognize the lesson in their fall. They focus on the pain, on the embarrassment, on the why me, instead of asking, what is God trying to teach me in this moment? The secret to permanent elevation is understanding that every rise and every fall has a purpose. You cannot skip the struggle and expect to understand the strength that comes from overcoming it. You cannot bypass the lessons and yet wonder why life keeps repeating the same pattern. And listen, this is where most people give up. They see the cycle, they see the struggle, and they declare defeat. But the truth is, your breakthrough is often hidden in the very moment of your fatigue, in the very second you feel like giving up. God is not done with you. He is not finished with the story He is writing in your life. The moment you realize that every fall is a setup for a higher rise, you begin to shift, you begin to step out of the pattern of temporary victories and into the realm of permanent establishment. Now, imagine, just for a moment, what it would feel like to rise and never fall again, to be lifted and established for good, to experience a life where your victories are not fleeting, where your progress is not constantly interrupted. That is not a dream, that is a promise. But the question is, are you ready to embrace the discipline, the understanding, and the mindset required to reach that level? Are you prepared to see the cycle for what it truly is and step into something far greater than temporary triumphs? Because the moment you grasp this truth, something powerful happens. The moment you see your struggles as preparation rather than punishment, your perspective shifts, your attitude changes, your destiny begins to take shape. And just as you begin to understand this principle, you will be ready to discover the next truth that will transform your life. The rise is real, the fall is real, but the lift and establishment, that is God's design for you. Have you ever felt trapped in a cycle where no matter how hard you climb, the weight of life keeps pulling you back down? You see, many people are trying to succeed with their own strength, with their own understanding, and they wonder why it never lasts. But here is the truth. There is a divine lift, a supernatural elevation that cannot be achieved by human effort alone. This lift, it is not about working harder. It is about being positioned in God's timing, in God's purpose, in God's favor. And when that happens, the rise is effortless, yet powerful, and it lasts. Think about it. When God lifts you, He does not lift you just to let you wobble on the edge of uncertainty. He lifts you to establish you, to position you, to secure you in a place where your victory cannot be taken away. But so many of us are trying to create stability in unstable places, trying to build lasting success on shifting sand. And the result? Frustration, disappointment, exhaustion, a feeling that no matter how far we climb, the ground always gives way beneath our feet. But listen, there is a secret that very few people understand. The divine lift begins with surrender. You cannot receive God's elevation while holding on tightly to your own plans, your own timing, your own understanding of how life should work. To experience this lift, you must release the illusion that you can control your destiny alone. You must open your hands and your heart and say, Lord, I am tired of struggling. I am tired of temporary gains. Lift me according to your will and establish me for good. And when you do, something incredible happens. The chains of limitation begin to break. The doors that were closed start to open. Opportunities come that you never saw coming. And it is in that moment you realize God's lift is not just about height. It is about alignment. It is about being in the right place, at the right time, doing the right thing, under the guidance of the one who knows the end from the beginning. But there is more. Receiving the lift is only the first step. The question is, will you be prepared to be established? Will you be ready to hold your position when life tests you again? Many people experience elevation only to lose it because they were not ready to handle the responsibility, the authority, the influence that comes with being lifted up. Elevation without preparation leads to humiliation, not honor. And this is where most people fall short. They want the lift, but they are not ready for the permanence of establishment. Imagine what it would feel like to rise, and not just rise, but to be established in a place of lasting purpose, a place where setback cannot touch you, where the storms of life cannot shake you, where your destiny is secure because it rests in God's hands. That is the power of the divine lift. That is what God has designed for you. And as you begin to grasp this principle, you will see that elevation is never random, it is intentional. The lift comes, yes, but the establishment is the prize. And just as you start to understand this, the next truth will reveal itself. One that will show you how to maintain that position and never return to the cycles of rising and falling again. The lift is powerful. The positioning is critical. And the establishment. That is God's promise for your life. Have you ever prayed and asked God, Lord, establish me for good, only to wonder why the ground beneath your feet keeps shifting? You see, many people desire permanence, stability, and security, but they do not understand the principle behind true establishment. True establishment is not something you achieve by force. It is not the result of luck, connections, or even relentless effort. No, it is the outcome of being aligned with God's purpose, walking in His principles, and obeying His timing. Think about it for a moment. You can climb mountains of opportunity, amass wealth, gain influence, and yet remain unstable. Why? Because you have not been established. You are like a tree planted in shallow soil. The storms come, the wind blows, and you tremble. But when God establishes you, when He positions you on the rock of His plan, no storm can shake you. No opposition can dislodge you. No circumstance can remove you from your rightful place. Establishment is permanent, it is unshakable, and it is divinely secured. But here is the question. How do you move from temporary elevation to permanent establishment? The answer is simple, but not always easy. Begins with understanding your identity and your purpose. You cannot be established in a position that is not meant for you. You cannot hold a place that you were never designed to occupy. God's establishment is precise. It is intentional. And it requires that you fully embrace who He has created you to be. Are you living in your purpose? Or are you trying to fit into someone else's plan? And let me tell you, preparation matters. Elevation without preparation is dangerous. Many people rise quickly. They taste success. They enjoy applause, but because they are not prepared, they stumble and they fall. True establishment requires character, discipline, patience, and wisdom. It requires the ability to remain steadfast when no one is watching. It requires integrity when the world pressures you to compromise. And it requires a heart fully surrendered to God's guidance. Because only He can ensure that your rise is lasting. Now imagine, just for a moment, what life would look like if you were fully established. You would no longer be tossed to and fro by every circumstance. You would not be dependent on chance or approval. Your victories would not be temporary, but lasting. You would stand firm, unmovable, confident that God has placed you exactly where you are supposed to be. And here is the beauty of it. Once you are established, the authority that comes with your position flows naturally. You influence, you inspire, you impact, not because you strive for it, but because God has positioned you for greatness. But here is where most people miss it. Being lifted is not enough. Being elevated is not enough. Establishment is the key that turns fleeting success into lasting impact. And as you begin to understand this principle, you will see the next truth waiting for you, the truth about walking in a position that cannot be taken, about living a life that is permanently secure, and about embracing the fullness of God's promises for your destiny. Elevation prepares you. Establishment secures you. And the next step ensures your permanence in God's design. Have you ever wondered why, no matter how many times you try to succeed, life seems to keep throwing obstacles in your path? You rise with hope, you work with determination, but somehow you stumble again. You think, why is it so hard to stay on top? The truth is, life is not just about rising, it is about walking in. Stability, about learning to stand firm, even when the storms come. And that is the principle behind walking in God's unshakable purpose. You see, too many people chase success without understanding the foundation they are standing on. They build their lives on fleeting moments, on temporary achievements, on approval that can vanish in a heartbeat. And when the pressure comes, when the storm rages, they fall and they wonder why. But here is the secret. Permanence is never accidental. Stability is never by chance. God's design is intentional. He does not want you to simply rise. He wants you to remain, to endure, to flourish, to walk in a place where your position cannot be taken. And this is where most people fail. They chase elevation without understanding purpose. They want success without understanding responsibility. They want recognition without understanding preparation. But walking in unshakable purpose requires more than desire, it requires alignment. It requires that your will is surrendered to God's will, that your actions reflect His principle, and that your focus is unwavering, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. Are you aligned with the source of your destiny? Or are you chasing shadows that will not last? Now listen carefully. Walking in unshakable purpose is not about avoiding challenges. It is about learning to stand firm in the midst of them. It is about knowing that when opposition comes, when trials test you, and when others abandon you, God is your firm foundation. And the beauty of it is this: once you learn to stand in that place, once you anchor your life in His design, no fall, no setback, no failure can ever redefine your destiny. You rise, not because the world lifts you, but because God has placed you on solid ground that cannot be moved. Imagine for a moment what it would feel like to be unmoved, unshaken, unstoppable, to rise and stay risen, to achieve and not lose, to succeed and not stumble. That is the power of walking in unshakable purpose. That is the reality of a life aligned with God's plan. And when you embrace this truth, you will find that life no longer has to be a cycle of temporary victories and crushing defeats. Your steps become intentional, your decisions become wise, and your influence grows because it is rooted in permanence, not chance. But here is the cliffhanger you must understand. Rising and standing firm are one thing, but there is a higher dimension. There is a level where your life is not only secure, it is impactful. Where your victory does not just affect you, it touches others. Where your purpose is not just preserved, it multiplies. And as you begin to see this next truth, you will realize that walking in unshakable purpose is only the beginning of a life fully aligned with God's eternal plan. Standing firm is vital. Walking aligned is necessary. And the next step is where your influence becomes unstoppable. Have you ever felt like no matter how much effort you put in, life keeps pulling you backward? You climb, you strive, you push, yet every time you think you've reached a peak, circumstances push you down again. And if you are honest, it leaves you asking, is this struggle ever going to end? I want you to understand something today. God never intended for you to live in a cycle of rise and fall. There is a way to move from struggle to stability, a way to experience His promises in fullness. And it begins with understanding the principle of divine permanence. Many people chase success as if it were a momentary prize, thinking that a victory today secures tomorrow. But listen carefully, true stability is not about temporary gains. It is about positioning yourself in God's plan, aligning with His purpose, and walking consistently in obedience and integrity. Stability is born from understanding that life's trials are not punishment. They are lessons designed to prepare you for permanence. Every setback, every disappointment, every delay is a teacher, and your willingness to learn from these moments determines whether your victories will be fleeting or lasting. Now consider this. Struggle is not an indicator of failure. It is often a sign that something greater is being prepared within you. The problem is that many people become discouraged. They focus on the pain, the inconvenience, the frustration of falling, and they forget to see the invisible work being done in their character, in their faith, in their understanding of life. True stability comes when you shift your perspective from what is happening to you to what is being formed in you. It is when you realize that God's process is more important than your comfort, and His timing is more precise than your plan. But stability is not automatic. It requires conscious effort to align your thoughts, your actions, and your heart with His principles. It requires discipline, patience, and resilience. You cannot expect to experience permanence if your decisions are temporary, if your commitment is conditional, or if your faith wavers at the first sign of difficulty. Stability demands that you refuse to be shaken, that you refuse to be moved by circumstances, and that you trust the unseen hand of God even when the visible world seems to be working against you. Imagine for a moment a life where struggle no longer defines your path, a life where setbacks are temporary, not permanent, a life where your victories are lasting, your purpose secure, and your destiny unfolding exactly as God intended. That is the reality of moving from struggle to stability. That is the promise for those who are willing to trust His process, embrace His principles, and remain steadfast in the face of adversity. And here is the question. Are you ready to stop merely surviving and start thriving? Are you ready to break free from the cycles that have held you down, to rise above the temporary and step into the permanent? Because the moment you embrace this principle, you will discover the next truth of truth that will not only secure your position, but also multiply your influence, your authority, and your impact in ways you never imagined. Struggle teaches, stability secures, and the next step unlocks a life of unstoppable, lasting victory. Have you ever cried out to God, Lord, I'm tired of rising and falling. Please lift and establish me for good. You see, there comes a moment in life when the cycles of temporary victories, fleeting success, and constant setbacks weigh so heavily on your heart that you realize you cannot do this alone. You've tried your best. You've fought. You've persevered. And yet, here you are, weary, exhausted, asking for more than just a rise. You are asking for permanence. And that, my friend, is the beginning of a divine encounter. Because you must understand this, God's lift is not random. It is not based on your ability to struggle, or your talent, or even your timing. It is based on His purpose. When God lifts you, it is intentional, it is precise, and it is designed to position you in a place where your victories cannot be stolen, where your progress cannot be reversed, and where your destiny can finally manifest without interruption. But here is the truth: many people want the lift, yet they are not ready to be established. They want elevation without preparation. They desire influence without integrity. They crave recognition without responsibility. And that is why the cycles continue. The divine lift is not just about rising, it is about being ready for permanence. It is about character development, spiritual alignment, and a heart fully surrendered to God's plan. Are you willing to release control? Are you ready to let go of what you think is right and embrace what God knows is best? Because the moment you surrender fully, the moment you trust completely, the divine lift begins to work. You will find opportunities you never sought, favor you never earned, and strength you never knew you had. And once that lift carries you to your God-ordained position, the next step, establishment, secures you for good. Establishment is the place where your life is no longer subject to the whims of circumstance. It is where your victories are permanent, your influence is enduring, and your legacy begins to unfold. It is where you rise and you stay risen, where you achieve and your achievement remains, where the storms of life may rage, yet you stand unmoved, unshaken, unstoppable. But to reach that place, you must embrace the principle that your rise is not complete until it is anchored in God's purpose. Your lift is temporary until it is tied to His plan. So listen carefully, the call is clear. You must seek the lift, yes, but even more, you must seek establishment. You must prepare your heart, sharpen your mind, strengthen your character, and align fully with God's purpose. Only then can the promise of permanence become your reality. And now hear this: you will no longer be tossed by the waves. You will no longer stumble in cycles of fleeting success. You will rise and remain lifted by God's power. You will be established in a place of unshakable victory. Your influence will spread, your purpose fulfilled, your legacy secured. The struggle ends, the blessing begins, and your life is forever changed.